medicine? Hippocrates. And the person who discovered the blood circulation was William Harvey. Now, talking about what health actually is, so it is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, meaning we are considered healthy if we are healthy in terms of our physical health, mental health, and social health also. Now, our health, it can be affected by several factors, some of which are genetic disorders, infections, and lifestyle, meaning the life that we have created for us. So these are some of the factors that can affect our health. Now, the certain stuff that are required to maintain our good health will be balanced diet, personal hygiene, like not a sedentary lifestyle, meaning a lifestyle with regular activity and stuff, that would be very important. Now, when we talk about diseases, so disease is the term we use whenever we say that, okay, maybe the functioning or the quality or maybe the health of either one organ or more organs or the systems of our body, when that gets affected, we say that we have a disease. Now, in terms of the diseases, they can be infectious or non-infectious depending upon whether they spread from one person to another. For example, the best example to talk about the infectious disease would be common cold. Now, common cold, this is the disease that if a person has it, the other person that comes in contact will definitely have common cold as well. They get contracted that easily. So infectious diseases, they are also called as communicable diseases. Whereas when we talk about the non-infectious ones, so these are the ones that if a person has it, the other person, no matter how close in captivity that person lives, will not have the disease. Like cancer. If a person has a cancer, there's no one that can get cancer from that person. Moving forward, when we talk about the pathogens, now see, all these diseases that are caused in the case of human beings and other organisms like plants and other animals also, disease are caused by, if it is, you can say infectious or non-infectious, many a times diseases are caused by pathogens. So pathogens are those living organisms that cause diseases. So what are those categories? We have bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoans, and helminths. All of these pathogens are disease causing. Now, the pathogen can enter our body, like inside our body, through multiple means, meaning they can enter through our mouth, they can enter when we inhale, they can enter in through our bloodstream. There are so many different ways through which a pathogen can enter a human's body. Now, what they do once they enter the human's body, they start multiplying and you can say they start colonizing inside the human's body. Colonizing means they start multiplying, making several colonies and sort of like a habitat of their own inside our body. And then they start depriving us of nutrients, or they start deteriorating our organs and stuff, as a result of which we get harmed. So in this particular chapter, there is the bacterial diseases that has to be discussed, viral diseases, helminthic diseases, protozoan diseases, and like several other different kinds of diseases as well. So when we talk about the bacterial diseases, this is a list of all the disease names and their causative organisms you people should know on the tip of your tongue. Typhoid, pneumonia, plague, tetanus, leprosy, cholera, diphtheria, dysentery, and tuberculosis. All of these lists, like this whole entire list is the list of the bacterial diseases. Now see, in the question, maybe they'll give you one disease and ask you the origin of it, whether it is bacterial, whether it is viral. So you should know which one's a bacterial disease, which one's not. Now typhoid, it is caused by Salmonella typhi. Pneumonia is caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae. Plague is caused by Yersinia pestis. Tetanus is caused by Clostridium tetani. Leprosy is caused by Mycobacterium leprae. Cholera is caused by Vibrio cholerae. Diphtheria, dysentery, they are caused by Corynebacterium diphtheriae. And tuberculosis, it is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Now, out of these diseases, some of them have been given special attention to. For example, typhoid. Now, typhoid is caused by Salmonella typhi. Now, where does this infection takes place at? So it takes place in the small intestine. The rest of the body does not get affected as such, but this is the site of infection. Now, the pathogens, how do they get inside our body? So they get inside when we consume contaminated food and water, meaning when we have certain food and water that has these pathogens in them. Talking about the symptoms of these diseases, so there is sustained high fever, weakness, stomach pain, constipation, headache, loss of appetite. And in the severe cases, meaning when we talk about the complications of this disease, so maybe because of the pathogen, intestinal perforation can take place. Intestinal perforation means in the small intestine, the organ, the holes can be created like pores. Pores are created in the organs, sort of like forming, imagine it like a pipe having lots of leaks. So just like that, intestinal perforation takes place, which may lead to the death of the organism, I mean the human. Now you might remember that during the COVID times, there was this particular test that people had to undergo, right? You remember the test? Do you know the name of that test?
PCR?
Yeah, it was RT-PCR, right? Real-time polymerase chain reaction. So that was the name of the test. So every disease sort of have a name or a test assigned or designated particularly for this. So the test of typhoid is known as the Vidal test or Vidal test, whatever you want to call it. Now there is this very important, or you can say significant phenomena and a person actually called as Typhoid Mary. Now, Typhoid Mary was a nickname, sort of very badly given to Mary Malone. Now, she was a cook by profession. Now, she had typhoid, and since she was a cook, so she sort of contaminated the food that she was cooking. And because of this contamination of the food, so many people that were eating the food cooked by her, they also got typhoid. So she was named after this particular phenomena. So maybe in the question, they can ask you as to who is Typhoid Mary and why is she called so. So now you know. The next disease is the pneumonia. Now, pneumonia is caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae or Haemophilus influenzae. All of these are bacteria. Now, the site of infection here, these pathogens, they will infect the alveoli of the lungs and not anywhere else. So, the alveoli, they get filled with fluid, because of which, now, do you people know what is the function of alveoli in our body?
And that's where the exchange of gases happen.
Exactly. So when we breathe in, the oxygen, they get like the oxygen gas gets diffused into our blood through the alveoli, and the carbon dioxide gets diffused out again through the alveoli. Now, alveoli is like a sac filled with air, but if that sac gets filled with some sort of fluid, so the area for which the gaseous exchange have to be taken place, that gets reduced, as a result of which the person has severe problems in respiration. Let us see what are the symptoms of this particular disease. So there is fever, chills, cough, headache. And in the severe cases, now since oxygen is not getting delivered in the body, so imagine the organs are not getting oxygen properly, as a result of which how our body indicates this. So the lips and fingernails, they may turn gray to bluish in color. Now in winter season, you people might have noticed that if you sit like crisscross on your legs, so you might see your nails, they start turning bluish. Have you noticed that in the winter time?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is actually because of the restricted blood flow, or they do not get enough oxygen supply. That's why that happens. So in the case of pneumonia, this can take place in severe cases. So bacterial diseases are clear to you all? Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, this is basically for you, Rishita, that if you have a doubt or sort of like, difficulty in learning the names of the disease, so I had made a mnemonic sort of a thing. So you can use that also to remember the names. So like TPPT, LCDT. So you can use this so as to remember the names of the diseases. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Also tell me wherever you feel like you need to note down something, I'll stop.
Okay, ma'am.
This you've noted down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this was the end of bacterial diseases. Now moving on to the viral diseases. Now remember that most of the viral diseases, they are infectious. These are all the diseases that are caused because of viruses in the body, like rhinitis, influenza, smallpox, chickenpox, measles, mumps. Then there is rabies, polio, dengue, chikungunya, and all sorts of hepatitis. Now, rhinitis, it's caused by rhinovirus. Influenza is caused by myxovirus influenzae. Smallpox is caused by variola virus. Chickenpox is caused by varicella zoster. Measles is caused by rubeola virus. Mumps is caused by paramyxovirus. Rabies caused by rhabdovirus, polio by poliovirus, dengue by arbovirus, chikungunya by chikungunya virus, and hepatitis like A, B, C, different forms of hepatitis, they are caused by different sorts of RNA viruses. RNA viruses meaning those viruses that have RNA, that is ribonucleic acid, as their genetic material. Now, when we talk about the viral diseases, so the first one is common cold, which is very fancy way it is called as rhinitis. So this disease is caused by rhinovirus. Now here, the site of the infection is the nose and the respiratory pathway or the passage. But always remember this as a thumb rule that the lungs, they do not get affected in the rhinitis. The lungs are not affected. Moving forward, talking about the symptoms of this particular disease, so there is nasal congestion and discharge, sore throat, hoarseness of the voice, cough, headache, and tiredness. It lasts for about 3 to 7 days. And students, tell me one thing. Do you think that any sort of viral diseases have a medicine? Like,
No,
is there
ma'am.
a medicine for common cold?
No, ma'am.
Why? Why is there no medicine for any sort of viral diseases? There must be a
Because
reason. Hmm.
they're technically not living outside the human body or the host body.
No, but for example, if a person has any sort of bacterial disease, right, typhoid, so there may be certain injections for typhoid. So, like, it is given to the person that has the disease or the pathogen in them, right? So, the bacterial diseases, they get cured because of that. Then why not the viral diseases? It's true that they are dead outside the body, but right now it's inside the body. So, they are living. So, why can't we kill them? Or why is there no disease, sorry, no medicine for it? No answers. Hmm? See, I'll give you two answers. The first thing, uh, I think all of you have studied virus. You know the basic things about virus, isn't it, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm. So while you were studying about virus, you might remember that viruses do not have a cellular structure, isn't it? They're not cell,
Yes.
right? That is why they're not capable of living outside the human body or outside the host's body. Now, when we talk about any kind of medicine or any kind of antibiotic that sort of, you can say, attacks the pathogen. So they attack either on the cell wall synthesis or maybe on the nucleus. But since the virus does not have the cellular structure, so where will this medicine attack? The first thing is this. Second thing is that viruses, I don't know how, but they are very, very smart. They change, they replicate a lot. You might remember that during the COVID times, there was COVID-19, and then later on, there was another form of that same virus. Remember the second wave of the lockdown? Why? It was the same thing, but it was very different in terms of its symptoms also and treatment also. It's because viruses, they have a very high rate of replication and they change a lot. That is why, for example, maybe you have successfully made a medicine that will kill the virus, but they change the way their body structure is like. They change the way their structure is like. So now your medicine won't work on it. So that's why. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
This is like something interesting. That is why I wanted you all to know. Now, moving forward. So that is why whenever we have a common cold, it lasts for 3 to 7 days and then it gets over and we get a relief from it. Then moving on to the next set of disease, that is the protozoan disease. The diseases that are caused due to the protozoa, such as malaria and amoebiasis. Now, malaria, this is caused by Plasmodium, which is a protozoa. Now, there are so many different species of Plasmodium, like Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malaria, and Plasmodium falciparum. Out of all of these species, the malaria, which is the deadliest, or the malaria that may lead to the death of the person, is caused by Plasmodium falciparum. The kind of malaria caused by them is malignant malaria, and it can be fatal, meaning cause the death. Now, malaria is spread by the bite of the female Anopheles mosquito. Now, remember, students, that all of the diseases that are caused because of a mosquito, okay, it's always the female mosquito and never the male mosquito. Now, can anyone tell me why? You, all of you have studied these chapters, right? You're doing the revision. So, answer. Why does the male mosquito not cause the, like, spread the disease, but the female does? Anyone?
Because the female can reproduce.
Correct. Exactly. Because it's the female only that has to carry the eggs and everything. And for the development of the gametes, for the development of the like its offsprings, it requires human blood. That's why. So here, now remember, the mosquitoes, they are the carriers of the disease, that is like the carrier of the pathogen of malaria, that is plasmodium. Carriers or vectors, you can call them. Now, mosquito is not a parasite. It just sits on the human, takes a blood meal, and that's it. Now, talking about the life cycle of plasmodium, many a times this will also be asked in a long answer question. So, practice this diagram also whenever you can. Okay, try to learn the like whole entire cycle. So if you explain it in a diagrammatic manner in your answer sheet, it'll be very impressive to the teacher. So now talking about the life cycle of the plasmodium. So firstly, the mosquito sits on the human, takes a blood meal. Now while the mosquito takes a blood meal, the sporozoites, which is the infectious stage of plasmodium, they get sort of transmitted into the blood of, like, in our bloodstream. Now, the way the insects like mosquitoes suck the blood, they have this sting. It is like pierce, and then they suck the blood. So first they pierce it like a needle, and then they suck the blood. So you might have noticed that when you drink from a straw, you might notice some of the fluid goes back into the cup or the glass or the bottle or whatever, and then some of it goes into your mouth. The same way the mosquito does the sucking motion for drinking the blood, and as a result of which some of the sporozoites from their salivary glands, meaning from their buccal, like their mouth, their salivary glands, they go into the human's blood. They get mixed with it. Now, once the parasites, the sporozoites are inside the blood, through the bloodstream, they will go into the liver. Once they reach the liver, they'll start their division. Now, the the parasites, they produce asexually in the liver cell, and then they burst the liver cells and come out into the blood. Now, in the blood, there is RBC, that is the red blood cells, as a result of which our blood is red in color. So now they go into the RBCs and they start reproducing again asexually. Then they burst the RBCs and come out. Now, while they are bursting the RBC, alongside a toxin called as hemozoin is released. Now, this hemozoin, what it does is that it causes bursts of fevers. So when a person has sudden onset of fevers during malaria disease, it's because hemozoin is being released into their bodies. So that is why they have that fever tendency. Now, moving forward, after this is done, then slowly, the asexual cells, they start becoming the sexual stages, and formation of gametocytes take place inside the red blood cells. Then the sexual stages are done. Now, when another mosquito, female mosquito, comes to take up the blood meal, now they take these gametocytes in them. And then these gametocytes, they fertilize, and the whole entire development, it takes place inside the intestine or the gut of the mosquito. Now, then further, after the fertilization is done, the zygote is formed and everything is done, then sporozoites are made, which is the infective further mature stages. And then these sporocytes, they go and rest in the salivary glands. And just like that, when the mosquito bites another human being, the malaria disease spreads. So the life cycle is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now see here, since the malarial parasite, that is Plasmodium, it requires the insect, that is the mosquito, Anopheles, and it also requires human's blood. So it requires two hosts. And since it requires two hosts to complete its life cycle, we call them as digenetic. Digenetic means it requires two hosts to complete its life cycle. What are the two hosts? Humans and mosquitoes. Now here, the mosquito is a host also, and it is acting like a vector as well. So that was malaria, the first protozoal disease. Now moving forward, there is amoebiasis. Amoebiasis, it is caused by Entamoeba histolytica. Now, Entamoeba histolytica, here they infect the large intestine. The symptoms may be constipation, abdominal pain, cramps, stools with mucus and blood clots. Now here, the housefly, they act like a mechanical carrier. So here, the vector would be the housefly. Moving forward, how do they get inside the body of us, or how do we get them? So it's because of the drinking water and the food that are contaminated by the fecal matter, which contains the entamoeba in. So that is how it happens. Now moving on to the diseases that are caused by the worms. So the diseases would be Ascaris filariasis. Now Ascaris, it is caused by the common roundworm called as Ascaris. The place where it affects will be small intestine. The site of infection, small intestine. Now again, fecal-oral route would be the way this particular pathogen comes into the body, acquired by contaminated fruits, water, and vegetables. Symptoms of this particular disease, ascariasis, would be internal bleeding, muscular pain, fever, anemia, blockage of the intestinal passage. Now, the eggs of the parasite, they are excreted along with the feces of the infected person, which contaminates the soil, which contaminates the water and plants. Now, mostly this disease is like mostly seen in the rural areas because there people go for defecation in the open areas, right? So since they go to the defecation in the open area, that is why they get caught with the disease. And also because since they are defecating in the open, now the soil is getting polluted, the water is getting polluted. So the person, like if a person, if a vendor uses the lakeside water, so that is a contaminated water. Then the next is filariasis or elephantiasis. Now this disease is caused by Wuchereria bancrofti or Wuchereria malai. Now they show slow chronic inflammation of the organs where they live. Inflammation is when the organ or any area gets swollen, gets red. That is when we say it has been inflamed. Now, chronic means like it doesn't occur quickly, it occurs like gradually and then for a long period of time. The site of infection for these pathogen or this disease here is the lymphatic vessels of the lower limb, like the legs. The genital organs are affected, resulting in gross deformities. So here, since the lymphatic vessels are getting affected, the genital organs, they are also getting affected, because of which they get deformed. The shape varies, the structure or the way they look, they become deformed. The vector over here is the female Culex mosquito. Now remember students, Anopheles mosquito is for malaria, female Anopheles. Then female Culex mosquito is for elephantiasis or filariasis. Then there's another mosquito called as Aedes. That mosquito is for dengue and chikungunya. Then coming on to the fungal diseases. So the fungi belonging to the genuses Microsporum, Trichophyton, and Epidermophyton, they are responsible for ringworms. Now, ringworms is the most common disease that are caused in the human beings, the most common one. Why? Because it's like a fungal infection. I think almost every person has undergone this particular infection once in their lifetime. Because why does it happen? If a person uses someone else's towel, if a person uses someone else's like hairbrush, combs and stuff, so then this disease may be caused. What are the symptoms of this disease? Dry, scaly lesions on various parts of the body, such as the skin, the nails, and the scalp. Intense itching starts after lesion develops. Heat and moisture. Now see, it's a property. Fungi or fungus, they have this property that they flourish. They grow so perfectly when they receive high moisture, when they have a higher temperature. Now, this is one of the reasons why I'll not connect these two things together, but you should know that since the fungus, they grow in a very high humidity or high moisture and heat area, that is why we keep our food in the refrigerator. Because in the refrigerator, there is a lower temperature, there's no moisture, as a result of which the fungus won't grow on the food that we eat. But here, since these areas like the skin, particularly in the folds, like under, like near the groin area, in between the toes, so those areas that have folds of skin present, so their moisture will naturally be there, as a result of which the fungus will thrive, they'll grow and flourish. Now the ringworms, they are generally acquired from soil or by using towels, clothes, or even the combs of other like the person that is infected with them. Moving forward, you should know that fishes like Gambusia, they feed on the mosquito larva. So if there is any, you might have heard that it is not good to keep stagnant water around. Why? Because the mosquitoes breed on them, they produce several more mosquitoes. So if the water bodies get introduced with the fishes like Gambusia, so they will feed on the mosquito larva. So any doubts up until now, students?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Moving forward, talking about the immunity. Now, immunity, it is the ability of, like, it's the natural property that all of our immune systems have. So it's like the ability of our immune system so that they can fight the pathogen, they can fight the disease causing organisms. Now, immunity is of two types in us, that is innate immunity and acquired immunity. So when we talk about innate immunity, so this is that every single person is born with. It's the kind of immunity that is present since the time of birth. It is non-specific, means it's not pathogen specific. It's like a generalized immunity that everyone has. Now, it is accomplished by providing different types of barriers. So remember that innate immunity is in the form of barriers. Now, let us talk about those barriers. The first one is physical barrier. You know that our whole entire body is covered by skin. So skin is the largest organ and it is the biggest, you can say, physical barrier so as to prevent the entry of microorganisms. That is why whenever we get cuts or whenever we get wounded, it is advised to cover that wound so that right now that part of the skin is broken. It's not complete, as a result of which the microorganisms can enter and cause several kinds of diseases. So that is why it is advised to cover the wounds. Now, mucus coating of our epithelium inside, lining of the respiratory, gastrointestinal, and urogenital tracts, they also trap the microbes that enter. Like if, let's just say the microbes did enter, but these mucus coating will trap them in it. So the first kind of barrier was physical barrier. Moving forward, there is physiological barrier. So physiological barrier is all sorts of chemicals that are there in our body that help to protect us from diseases. For example, the acid in the stomach, saliva in the mouth. Which acid is present in our stomach, students?
HCl.
Hydrochloric acid is there. The saliva in our mouth, it's also antibacterial. The tears that are produced in our eyes, that is also antibacterial and it prevents the growth of the microbes. So this was physiological barrier. And then there comes the cellular barrier. Now, cellular barrier is when certain cells that are present, they are responsible for providing immunity, like the WBCs, like the PMNL, that is polymorphonuclear leukocytes, monocytes, and natural killer cells like macrophages. What they do, that their sole purpose, their function is that whenever they see any foreign pathogen or any microbes, they eat them and they destroy them. So that is the cellular barrier that we do have in us. Then there is the cytokine barrier. Now, cytokine barrier is when the cells that are infected with the viruses. So those cells, they release a certain chemical called as interferons. Now, these interferons, they protect the non-infected cells so that they don't get affected by the viruses. So innate immunity is clear to you all? Yes, any
ma'am.
doubt? Also, is there any particular topic that you people had like needed a revision in, or the whole entire chapter?
Ma'am, the entire chapter.
Okay. Now moving forward, talking about the acquired immunity. Now acquired, something we acquired is something we have gotten or something we have sort of, you can say, accomplished through our life. So now this kind of immunity is specific to the pathogen, meaning it is like particular for a typical pathogen or the microbe that comes inside our body. Now, once, let's just say the pathogen came inside our body, so that was the primary response, meaning as soon as the pathogen would enter our body, then a primary response will be made, meaning that antibodies will be starting to synthesize, like it will be synthesized in our body. And then if the same pathogen comes around for the second time, now our body has the pathogen for it, like the antibodies to kill it, and that is the secondary response or the anamnestic response. Our body always have the memory of the first encounter. So our body remembers when the pathogen has entered. Now, the primary or secondary immune responses, they are carried out with the help of lymphocytes. Our bodies, they have two types of lymphocytes, B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Both of them provide immunity to us. Now, the B lymphocytes, they produce an army of pathogens, not army of pathogens, army of proteins, that is antibodies. Whenever any pathogen enters inside our blood, and these antibodies are proteinaceous substances. So these antibodies, they start to fight with the pathogen and destroy it. The T lymphocytes, they do not produce antibodies, but they are mostly helpful to the B lymphocytes to produce the antibodies and sort of kill the pathogens entering. Now talking about the structure of the antibody. So each antibody, it has 4 peptide chains. Peptide is proteinaceous compound. So 2 smaller chains are called as the light chains, and the longer or the larger ones are called as the heavy chains. Now an antibody, it is represented as H2L2, referring to H2 means the heavy and the L2 means the 2 light chains. The different antibodies found are IgA, IgM, IgE, and IgG. Now, since the antibodies, they are found in the blood, and it is the fluid connective tissue of our body, so we call the response that is happening through the blood as the humoral immune response. Now, the second type of the immunity, or the second type of acquired immunity. The first one is humoral. The second is cell-mediated. The cell-mediated immunity is by the T lymphocytes. Now, you people know that those people that have undergone organ transplant. So, since the organ, they get transplanted into their bodies, that's like a foreign object. So, maybe our cell-mediated immunity can reject those organs, whether it is the liver, kidney, or anything of that sort. That is why the person who has undergone the organ transplant, that person always remain on a heavy dose of immunosuppressants. So sort of their immune systems are suppressed so that their own immune system will not sort of kill or reject the organ that has been transplanted. Then there comes this acquired and passive immunity. Now, active and passive. Now, active immunity is when, as soon as the pathogen enters, and then the antibodies are synthesized. But it takes time. So, active immunity is slow and it takes time. But when we talk about the passive immunity, it's when the ready-made antibodies are there, and it's like vaccinations. Vaccination is like passive immunity. The ready-made antibodies are given, and just in case whenever the pathogen enters, our body is ready to fight. Now coming on to the next, that is the variety of diseases that are there. Now the first one is allergy. Now allergy, it's like the response, it's like highly exaggerated response of our immune system that is caused in response to allergens. Allergens may be pollen, it can be dust, it can be sunlight also in some people's case. The like mites, dander, hair of other animals, that which can trigger a response like sneezing, watery eyes, running nose. Now it is caused by the excessive release of histamine and serotonin in our body. Also, immunoglobulin E is also released into the body, as a result of which this allergic reaction is caused. This much is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, moving forward, there is autoimmune disease. Now, normally we know that our immune system it has been designed in such a way that it will attack the pathogen, the foreign substance. But sometimes when our immune system cannot distinguish what is self and foreign, so when it starts attacking our own body cells, like our own immune system attacking our own body cells, so then that is what we call as an autoimmune condition. And the most important disease is rheumatoid arthritis. In this case, inflammation of the joints take place. Here the immune system cannot distinguish whether it is the body cell or the foreign agent, and then it starts attacking the body cells itself. Any doubt? All right, just give me 2 minutes. All right, now we will further see the immune system through this PDF of NCRT itself. So our immune system, it consists of multiple organs, multiple cells. There is the lymphoid organs present, the tissues, the cells, and obviously the antibodies. Now, when we talk about the immune system of our body, so our immune system is extremely important whenever we talk about the fighting of any sort of disease. It's also responsible for the organ transplant, rejection, and everything related to that. Now, when we talk about the lymphoid organs, so these are the organs where origin and maturation and proliferation of lymphocytes take place, meaning the two lymphocytes that I talked to you about, the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes, they get matured. Firstly, they are synthesized in the lymphoid organs, and then they are going to mature also in the lymphoid organs. Now, lymphoid organs, they are of two types, primary and secondary. Now, the primary lymphoid organs, these are the bone marrow and thymus. Now, here, the lymphocytes that are immature, they start to differentiate and they become antigen specific or antigen sensitive. After the maturation has been completed, the lymphocytes, they go to the secondary lymphocyte organs like spleen, lymph node, and tonsils. In the small intestine, there's Peyer's patch and appendix. In that area, what happened? They sort of will proliferate. Proliferation means they'll divide into more and more numbers. So these, like, you should know what is the primary lymphoid organ. So bone and thymus. The secondary lymphoid organs, we have tonsils, lymph nodes, spleen, meaning at this point or at this area, the lymphocytes, they'll become larger in number, they'll proliferate. Now, the bone marrow, it is the main lymphoid organ where all the blood cells, including the lymphocytes, are produced. The production takes place in the bone marrow, whether it is RBC or the lymphocytes, different kinds. Now, the thymus, it is a lobe organ which is located near the heart. And beneath the breastbone, you people might remember from class 11th, it is an endocrine gland as well. So, this one is responsible for the production of thymosins. Right, now the thymus is large at the time of birth, but slowly with age, it starts reducing, and till a person hits the time of puberty, it reduces in size and to a very small size, in fact. Both bone marrow and thymus, they provide microenvironments for the development and maturation of the T lymphocytes. So this is where they develop and mature and become functional. Now the spleen, see, the spleen is many a times called as the graveyard of RBC. Apart from that, the spleen is the area wherein, first of all, it is a large bean-shaped organ and it contains the lymphocytes and the phagocytes. We know that spleen is a secondary lymphoid organ. So the function that it does is that it traps all the dead blood vessels and the you can say the phagocytes and the microorganisms that are there. Sort of, it acts like a filter. It is a large reservoir of erythrocytes. Now the lymph nodes, they are small solid structures. They are located at the points of the lymphatic system. Now the lymph nodes, they are also responsible for trapping the microorganism or any sort of antigen. Antigens trapped in the lymph nodes, they are responsible for the activation of lymphocytes. See, whenever we talk about lymphocytes or antibodies, they need a trigger so as to get activated, or else they can't. So that's why. Now there is a lymphoid tissue that is associated with the major tracts of a body, like respiratory tract, digestive tract, and urinogenital tract. That is called as mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. Now it constitutes 50% of the lymphoid tissue in the body. And imagine how much of immunity will it provide to us because it's present in such a huge number. Moving forward, there is now discussing about AIDS, certain big diseases that we have to discuss in this particular chapter. Now, AIDS is the disease which is caused by, tell me, which is caused by which organism? Bacterial or virus?
Virus.
It's caused by a virus, that is human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. Now the AIDS, it stands for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Syndrome means a collection or a group of symptoms. Meaning here in this disease, there's not just one symptom that happens. There are a lot of things. Now, AIDS was first reported in 1981. In the last 25 years or so, it has spread a lot and killed many people. Now, this is caused by human immunovirus, which is a member of the virus, a group called as retrovirus. Now, they have the RNA, that is ribonucleic acid, as their genetic material. Now, the transmission of HIV virus, it can occur by sexual contact with an infected person, transfusion of the contaminated blood. Maybe the blood that was transfused contained the HIV virus in it. So by sharing of the needles, again, contamination of the blood only. This happens in the people that are drug abusers and they take drugs through the veins by the means of injections. And the worst of the worst is that the HIV can travel through the placenta. So it can reach to the fetus also. So people that have multiple sexual partners or that are like people, those are drug abusers, they are at the risk of this particular disease. So all in all, what does it do? So now, as soon as the retrovirus, that is the HIV, it enters the cell of the animal. So now they start producing viral DNA from viral RNA. Why? Because we know that retroviruses are those viruses that have this particular enzyme in them called as the reverse transcriptase. And with the help of that reverse transcriptase, they can synthesize DNA. Now this viral DNA, it gets sort of connected or incorporated into the host's genome. And now the host, instead of producing the host DNA, it produces the viral DNA. And similarly, viruses multiply like that. Now, it is important to remember that AIDS is, yes, it is a communicable disease, but it will not spread because of the contact or sort of, you can say, touch. It doesn't spread like that. It is because of the body fluids. Okay, so that is how it spreads. Now moving forward, now see, the most scariest, like the scariest thing about it is that once the infection is there in the body, the symptoms will not be seen for many years. The symptoms are seen when they have like multiplied a lot, and that is like after 5 to 10 years. So they have a time lag period, incubation period we call it. Now after getting into the body, the virus enters into the macrophage, and this whole thing I've already explained, that they make the viral DNA because of like it makes the animal cell produce the viral DNA instead of its own set of DNA. Now moving forward, it enters into the T lymphocytes. Now you people know T lymphocytes had such a big role to play in terms of its immunity, and because of, since it is entering the T lymphocyte, it replicates and produces progeny viruses. Now it attacks several other T lymphocytes, because of which the person's immunity is severely compromised. So during this period wherein the T lymphocytes are getting affected, the person suffers a lot of fever, sudden onsets of fever, diarrhea, and weight loss. Because the T lymphocytes are decreasing, so now there are so many other diseases that can be caused, right? And those pathogens that are causing these diseases, we call them as the opportunistic disease, like pathogens. Opportunistic, why? Because the humans immune system is compromised so badly, so they get this opportunity to infect the person. What are those opportunistic pathogens? Like mycobacterium, viruses, other viruses, fungi, and some parasites like toxoplasma. Now the patient becomes so immunodeficient that he or she is unable to protect themselves. As a result of which, what happens? They, like, remember one more thing, students, that the AIDS disease is not curable. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now talking about how, like, the diagnostic test for it, it is ELISA, that is enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. This test is done so as to find out whether a person has AIDS or not. Now remember, since the AIDS disease is not treatable, it's not curable, so we can only sort of treat the symptoms that are produced, but not the whole entire disease. It is not possible to treat it. Talking about the prevention of AIDS. Now AIDS, it has no cure, so prevention is the best option. HIV infection spreads to because of the conscious behavior. It's not something by chance, right? So First of all, a person must not engage in certain multiple sexual partners. They must be aware of the things around them. Also, there is National AIDS Organization, that is NACO, that is National AIDS Control Organization, and several different NGOs that are aiming to educate the people about the ill effects of it. Now, making blood safe, like only taking the blood from the people that are actually have undergone the test, that have a normal blood, so as to not affect the person. And then making ads about how it is important to stay safe from it and all the things associated with it. Moving forward, the distribution of free condoms, controlling drug abuse, advocating safe sex, and all of these things are one step forward towards it. Now, remember those people that do have this particular disease, since it is not treatable, it's not curable, so they may feel alone, and we should not seclude them. Instead, we should show sympathy and all of that thing. So, AIDS is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, moving forward to the scariest non-communicable disease, that is the cancer. It is the most dreaded disease, and it is the major cause of death all over the globe. There are millions and millions of people that suffer from cancer, and there are so many of them that die because of it. Now, what is actually cancer? See, basically, normal condition, I'll tell you, our cells divide, right? Whenever there is a certain amount or number of cells needed, they divide, and then they stop division when they are not needed. So this property is called as contact inhibition, that they will divide as much as needed and then they'll stop. But this contact inhibition property is not found in the cancerous cells. So cancerous cells are those normal cells only of our body that have lost the property to stop dividing. Now they undergo uncontrolled division, as a result of which they start forming a mass of cells, which we call as tumor. So tumor can be localized in any particular organ, any place in the body. Now the tumors, they are of two types, benign and malignant, depending upon whether they are spreading or not. Benign tumors are those that do not spread. They stay localized in that area and they cause little damage, and it's easier to surgically remove it. When we talk about malignant tumors, so these are the ones that do not have this property of staying in one place. They divide and divide so much that they can invade the body of the person, as a result of which they start damaging the normal tissues and depriving them of nutrition. So this property, wherein the tumor or the mass of cells, it spreads from one cell to another, making all of the cells cancerous, we call it as metastasis. It is the spreading property, and it is the most feared property, because how can a doctor surgically remove a tumor that is everywhere in the body? It's not possible to remove that. So that is why malignant tumors are very, very scary things. Now, talking about causes of the cancer. What can be the possible cause of cancer? See, many a times it's because of certain oncogenes in our body. Oncogenes, like these are the genes that can become cancerous under certain conditions. Transformation of normal cells into cancerous cells can be because of carcinogens. Carcinogens are cancer-causing agents. It can also be caused because of ionizing radiation like X-rays, gamma rays, because mutation happens, so cancer can be caused. The chemical carcinogens that are present in the tobacco, right? A person who smokes tobacco or chews tobacco, so they can also have different forms of cancer. A person who smokes tobacco can have lung cancer, and the person who chews tobacco can have mouth cancer. Now, there are several cancer-causing viruses called as oncogenic viruses, and they can cause cancer in our body. Several genes called as cellular oncogenes or proto-oncogenes They have been identified in normal cells. Proto-oncogenes means they are inactive. They are not activated. But maybe under radiations or under some sort of mutation in the body, that like the known cause is not yet known. So they can become cancerous. So they can have this transformation done in. Talking about the cancer detection and diagnosis. So it's very important to detect it early. If it is detected early, it can be treated early. And if not, then obviously the person can have that spread in the whole entire body. So what are the tests that can be used to detect it early? So biopsy, CT scan, that is computed tomography, then MRI, that is magnetic resonance imaging. So these are very important if we want to detect the cancers that are present in the internal organs. So the computed tomography, it uses the X-rays to make a 3D image. MRI, it uses strong magnetic fields. It can detect in the living tissue. Live action can be detected. That is currently going on. Antibodies against cancer-specific antigens, they are also used for detection of certain cancers. So molecular biology like PCR techniques can also be applied so as to find out whether it is being done or like if the cancer is spreading or is it there or not. Treatment of cancer. So common approaches for treatment of cancer would be surgery. If there is a benign tumor, it is easily removed by surgery. If it is a malignant tumor, then there is like, it's not so easy to remove that. Furthermore, there is radiation therapy. Okay, radiotherapy. Then there is chemotherapy, that is the use of certain chemicals. Because of that, immunotherapy can also be given to the person. So these are all the different kinds of therapies that can be taken. Now, the main thing with radiotherapy and chemotherapy is that it's not specific. It's like what happens is that if a person has this particular like chemotherapy done in their body, so it's not going to just target the cancerous cells. Rather, it will target all kinds of cells, as a result of which the normal cells also will die. Getting my point? So that is why they have a lot of this thing, side effects like hair loss, anemia, and all of that. So yes, it can be cured by a combination of surgery, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy. Also, tumors have been like shown to avoid detection and destruction by immune system. So that is why the patients are given substances that are called as alpha interferon. This helps the immune system to destroy the tumor. Here, students?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so for today, we'll keep it till here. And in the next task, meaning tomorrow, we'll discuss the drug and alcohol abuse and then start a new revision